Ulonka tabati yada to ye kuma daifa. Inu to ye go je love bipa. Oba tala oba takutakun. Songo eshu ogun oya osun. Kini sheshe tan she nile yi o. O je lo jara.
Lafayette, peace and power, family. Welcome to another episode of the African Spiritual Experience. I'm the host, Orisha Gbemi, and we are back with another War Report, family. It's been a little while, man, but we're back in these Ashe streets doing what we do, being what we being. And first and foremost, before we get into it, shout out to the tribe, shout out to the Patreon, shout out to all the new channel subscribers, all the new channel members, and shout out to everybody who's been showing love and support, man. Everybody who's been in the comments, checking other trolls and everything for me. I was just chopping it up with a brother today who was doing that, man. I appreciate you, family. Appreciate all the love, support. And yeah, brother Bdell, man, appreciate you coming through, doing what you always do, man, for this next edition of the War Report, The Silenced Minds. It's a good one, man. I'm ready to get it in. What's good with you, family? How you doing?
I'm doing great, and salute to everybody on your channel. And we back, you know, we're going to be giving out the edification like we always do. So let's get it started.
Yes, sir. Like we always do about this time. I think that was that old Snoop album, I think. Either him or Dre, one of them. But yeah, that's facts, man. So before we let's just dive right in, man. So I didn't get a chance to pick your mind about this before we came on air. Like, you know, most times we get to chop it up a little bit before we go. But the David Wilcock, I definitely want to pick up right there and you know, jump into that, because on my last live stream, shout out to Wuna, we tapped into it. Matter of fact, I think it was the same day that they announced that he had transitioned or what have you, and we talked about it a little bit. But I didn't realize how many of the star cast from the Ancient Aliens franchise have been unalived recently. I actually got some research waiting for me on my laptop, you know, to do a deep dive onto that, because damn near seems like the whole cast pretty much been you know, off, you know, so it's like on top of all the other scientists, all the high-ranking military officials, all the, you know, researchers and the so-called whistleblowers, and then they're targeting content creators such as, you know, the people, you know, yours truly and yourself, and it's a lot of us, you know, fighting through the matrix, man. But they're not going to stop God's work. So I look at it like, you know, it is what it is, man. But with David Wilcock, you know, we spoke about Simeon Toko in one of our previous episodes, and I remember a short that I shared on IG. That thing went crazy, man, because, you know, you gave a fast analysis on it, you know, when we was chopping it up about Simeon Toko. But it seems to be he is like a good fundamental foundation to a lot of these things that's coming about, especially in mention of David Wilcock. So what's your perspective on, you know, the transition of him and, you know, the conspiracy behind it? And then what do you think this is all about, you know, in the grand scheme of things?
Well, when it comes to David Wilcock, he understood the mechanisms when you're talking about the Ultraterrestrials, and these Ultraterrestrials are also known as the Cryptoterrestrials. These are the same entities that the 12 scientists or the 13 scientists the ones that was basically unalive. These are the same entities that they were basically talking about, and the Ultraterrestrials are basically the embodiments of Simeon Toko, right? That is basically the Black Jesus, the Black Jesus who had, you know, the abilities, these metaphysical energies to, you know, cause healing and being able to regenerate himself on an infinite level, because he had immortalized cell lines. Now, when you go to John chapter 14, verse 12 in the Bible, it talks about how those who believe in Jesus is going to have the abilities of Jesus. Right. So when you look at the story of Simeon Toko, it speaks about how he said at the end, he said, you know, if you guys keep unaliving me, you know, over the course of time, there's going to be thousands that are basically just like me. So that's basically telling you that, you know, in real time that, you know, all this energy is being amplified by the sun. That's where you get your, you know, fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional energies from. That's where you get your spiritual gifts. It lives in the spiritual plane, which is the fifth dimensional plane, which is the magnetosphere. So that means that you have to be tapped into a certain mental frequency in order to reap the benefits of these intrinsic abilities. So when you're talking about, you know, resurrection by way of DNA activation, you're actually talking about the spiritual modalities that we get from the energy of the sun, to where we're able to extrapolate the same abilities as Simeon Toko. So, but David Wilcock, when you go to his book, Synchronicity Key, he extrapolates that knowledge, talking about the Black Jesus, and the co-author, 2 days before David Wilcock's death, he was also unalived as well. So it was basically a cover-up because they understand that these ultra-terrestrials that lives in the lower fourth dimension and the upper fifth dimension, and you also have interdimensional ones. A lot of these entities, they're able to interface with so-called Black people. So these are basically non-corporeal spirits that's able to interface with us and use us as a vessel to create these metaphysical abilities such as telepathy, psychometry, clairvoyance, intuition, all those abilities that's coming from the fifth dimensional realms.
So it's funny because this ultra terrestrial thing is something that's pretty new, you know, for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are familiar with extraterrestrial, and I know some people are familiar with ultra terrestrial. But can you kind of break down for those who are unfamiliar with what is ultra terrestrial, and then kind of like what's the difference between what we know as an extraterrestrial versus an ultra terrestrial?
An extraterrestrial is basically something that's beyond this terrain. So extraterrestrial can be an asteroid, it can be a meteorite, because it's basically being extracted from the Van Allen belt. So anything that's coming from outside the firmament into, you know, a certain geographical landmass, that can be considered as an extraterrestrial. Now, ultraterrestrial is a multi-dimensional entity because they have a corporeal form and a non-corporeal form. They can live in the three-dimensional state, and they can operate in the fifth dimensional state, in the fourth dimensional state, and other dimensional realities as well. So that's basically the delineation between the two.
So now ultra terrestrials to considered to be kind of like I won't really say humanoid form because there's a lot of different terrestrials who are considered extraterrestrials who come in different forms. For example, you have like the praying mantis type beings, you have the, you know, the Bigfoot, you know what I mean, Sasquatchian beings. Like these are all different forms of extraterrestrial. They come in so many others as well. So are these ultra terrestrials, are they considered to be beings that can kind of materialize into physical form? And are they some of them humanoid beings, or are they kind of like just like energy, you know, beings, like spiritual beings? Like what type of beings are these that we're talking about with ultra terrestrial?
So when I'm saying like corporeal and non-corporeal, they're able to dissipate in the form of vaporization. So just like the black shadowy figures, when people have sleep paralysis, when you're sleeping, you see those shadowy figures in your room or whatever. A lot of those times, it's not just what you call, they're not basically the personification of a demon. That can be a gray humanoid in a non-corporeal state, or that can be a draconian reptilian in a non-corporeal state. Because a lot of people, when you look at the emulation of a person who is subjected to sleep paralysis, it looks like a gargoyle, and a gargoyle is basically a branch of some type of lizard-like draconian entity. So when you look up sleep paralysis, it shows you like a lizard entity on the chest of a human being. So that tells you right there that in real time that they have two different, you know, ways to basically being able to cloak themselves. They have corporeal state and a non-corporeal state. So the non-corporeal state is the shadowy entities that you don't see. I mean, that you see when you're basically in a state of sleep paralysis. But the corporeal form is these entities that you see on cathedrals, the ones that you see when you study neoclassical art or when you study ontological artifacts. All those things is connected to you know, when you get into different mythologies and other schools of thoughts. But a lot of these entities or whatever, they have a corporeal state and a non-corporeal state. The non-corporeal state is the black shadowy entities. The corporeal state is actually the physical vessel. So sometimes when you see these entities in the physical vessel, they look just like a humanoid. Because when you get into like Tibetan mythology or whatever, they talk about the jinn. The jinn are basically non-corporeal entities that take upon a humanoid genetical structure. And the more that they die, the more that they come back to the planet, the more that they look human. So every time that they come to the planet, they look more human every time, because it's kind of like they're learning human behavior, which is basically connected to a branch of esoteric Gnosticism, because they say in the archonic forces they don't have the ability to manipulate human behavior because they don't have human emotion. So it can only mimic the energy of humans. So this is why they want the reincarnation trap to basically be so perpetual. Is to learn the human instinct to where they have the ability to break outside the firmament. That's why they're in a quarantine zone. So that's why God of the Bible is actually the devil. So God of this world is actually the devil. Everything is backwards. Everything is inverted. Because that's how these entities is able to interface with your chakra system. They got to invert your frequency. When you look at the LGBT flag, it's an inversion of frequency. Right? Because they got the crown chakra at the bottom and the red chakra at the top. That means that your motherfucking consciousness went down to your ass. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
look.
They did it for a reason, because that's how they interface with you. They got to make shit upside down. When you live in the upside down, just like when they was talking about in Stranger Things, the upside down is how these entities is able to interface with you. In the lower fourth dimension, in the upper fifth dimension. So that's why, you know, everything's inverted. Everything's inverted, and everything is attacking you from a sexual level, because your sexual energy is your spiritual energy. And if you don't have those sexual energies imbalanced, you know, you can basically be manipulated by these negative forces.
And it's crazy because it's like literally flipped the script, you know, with the polar polarity, because it went from the crown chakra, which we should be operating out of, right, at the top of the crown, to the root chakra, which is at the bottom. You know what I'm saying? You know, where the second head speaks. You know what I mean? But it's crazy too. If you think about Africa on the map, from my research and understanding, Africa is actually shown to us upside down. It's actually the horn is supposed to be at the bottom, and then, you know what I mean, like the handle of it is supposed to be at the top. So that's another reason I feel like they do that, is to get that inversion. Not just that, but to make it look a lot smaller than what it really is. It's a lot bigger, huge, you know, a lot more extremely more significant in size than what they portray in regards to the maps that we're seeing today. So yeah, that sounds about right. Okay. So why do you feel like not only that they targeted Wilcox, but the whole cast of aliens? Like, what is the significance? What do you feel like they're trying to, I guess, detour, or what are they trying to like stop from happening by, you know, these people being unalived?
The reason that is because they know that genetical self-preservation is interfacing with these energies on the planet, to where the biological vessel of the carbonated people on the planet become portals. That's what these astrophysicists is basically talking about. They're talking about the opening of portals to where you're able to time jump. There's a reason why recently, just, you know, a few days ago, in the Virgo star constellation in the galaxy, it talks about the M87, the M87 manhole, which is a black hole. And a black hole is basically a interface transition in the cosmos that creates time dilation. And time dilation is how you're basically able to time jump. So what I'm saying is that a lot of people don't understand that your neurological chemistry, such as your pineal gland, the neuromelanin, the black dot, is able to interface with the MR87, which is a black hole. And that black hole takes you to a different space and time neurologically. So when you're talking about time jumping and you're talking about going to different dimensions, it's basically denoting the fact that you have to be operating from the neurological space. And you have to be balanced. So a lot of the astrophysicists, what they were basically talking about is that you have a certain technology which is basically not man-made. It's basically something that comes from the cosmos, that was created by the cosmos, because, you know, when you understand the genetical structure of the carbonated man and woman on the planet, the body is made up of 95% stardust. So that means that you're basically a walking God particle, because your physical vessel contains quarks and leptons. Quarks and leptons, that's basically a time machine. You are basically a walking CERN portal in real time. So that's why I'm saying, so a lot of this stuff, as far as like the astrophysicists, when you're talking about the ultraterrestrials and time jumping, They're actually talking about these entities that's able to interface with us and give us these abilities, such as Simeon Toko, such as Simon Kambuga from the Congolese, and other figures who had metaphysical abilities.
Yeah. So, you know, and so I feel like at this point in time, this is where I feel like the brother who made what's the name of that show? Damn it. We talked about it. It's on Netflix. Supercell. This is where now I feel like the significance of the genius of the brother who made that show or that series, Supercell, because he was the genius behind just the name alone and the play on words, you know what I'm saying, for the Supercell is to me literally almost like a whole drawn out Sports Center highlight of what we're talking about now, what's happening in real time, because they don't want us to access the God factor or the God code, which is the pineal gland or the black dot. Dr. Richard King has some dope, phenomenal work on that, as a matter of fact. And by us being able to access and tap into that, that does give us the ability to turn into superhuman, you know what I'm saying, like Superman or superhuman. Because the one thing that, you know, people say, and some say it's mixed up between Simeon Toko and the other brother you just mentioned, but either way it goes, when he left, he said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and leave or whatever, but when I come back, it's gonna be an army of us, you know what I mean? It's gonna be way more than just me. So I feel like that's what Supercell was showing us in real time, and not to mention X-Men, you know, the Avengers, you know what I mean? All these superhero movies have been shown, Star Wars, all that's showing real life. I feel like real life reality for those who have the ability to tap into that, you know, supernatural, you know, power.
Yep, because when you get into ancient Kemetic spirituality, it talks about Apophis, which is also known as the Great Work, which is also known as, you know, the magnum opus of creation, where a human becomes God in the golden age. So we're in the apex of the golden age because we're in the last sun cycle. So what happens? This is where the man, the carbonated man and woman, go through a crystalline state to where they're able to tap into their metaphysical abilities, such as, you know, Superman capabilities. A lot of people, you know, they put a lot of, you know, commentary out there and they make jokes about it, like we ain't got our powers yet. You do have the ability to interface with ether to the point where you're able to travel on 0-point energy fields and become, you know, everything that's, you know, what is quintessence and omnipotent and omnipresent at the same time. But, you know, these energies in real time, you know, it's a real thing. And it's kind of like the same concept as when you watch the movie with Robin Williams, Hook. You know, you got to believe in yourself. In order to tap into these energies, you got to be able to believe in yourself, because that's basically tapping into your fifth dimensional self. You got to believe. That's why, like I said, John chapter 14, verse 12, those who believe in me will have the same abilities of me. Right? So that means, like I said, Jesus, when you're talking about believing in Jesus, you're basically talking about believing it in your motherfucking self. You're not talking about an actual entity. It's basically an energy. It's an energy that is cultivated by the 144,000 frequency, which is non-ether frequency, non-ether energy, basically. So with that being said, you know, when it comes to that, you know, it's all about them trying to stagnate the evolution to the point where a human doesn't transmute into the energy of God. That is the 13 zodiac wheel. That's why Ophiuchus is seen as an entity, a person holding a snake. That snake represents man walking on water, right? The Nile River, which is the spinal column, right? Why you think he stops at 33 degrees? Because at you know, and the reason they stop at 33 degrees and they stop at the age of 12, because from 12 to 33, that's when Jesus disappeared and came back. They don't mess with the number 13. Because the number 13 represents a higher frequency interval that represents a different octave vibration. A different octave vibration means a different dimensional plane, the fifth dimension. Right? So everything is musical tones and frequencies.
Yes, sir. It's so funny because when you said that, every time I hear that, all I can think about is, I can't remember the name of the song, but the Outkast song, when 3 Stacks said, I got off at the 13th floor and they told me that it wasn't one. They said it skipped from 12 to 14, still smoking, still drinking. No, I'm
Yep.
sitting in the
See, he get it. He get it. Because like
100,000. That's why it came.
Because look, when you look at the spinal column horizontally, it's a piano key.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piano key. So that means that your vibratory system has to be in tune to where you go from 12 to 33. Because they said that's during the time when Jesus disappeared. He disappeared at the age of 12 and came back when he was 33 and then had the abilities, right? So from 1 to 12, that's where you go from adept, neophyte to master. He came back when he was a master because 33 is a master number, right? Yeah. But the 33 is also an 8. So that means that he was incarnated for a reason, just like the chosen ones. We are basically incarnated on this planet to bring a certain vibration, to reverse the polarity of the Piscean age of darkness, right? To reverse the negative frequencies that was constructed by the energy of the moon, which basically messed up the human circulatory system, which is why the planet's been on red alert for the last 12 to 13,000 years. That's the reason why. So that's why the great majority of all the religions, they operate on the Sabbath. It's a moon energy that takes you away from God, which is your higher self.
That's deep. I like that.
And then notice the moon, because the moon, the configuration of the number 8, it went to the moon. That was the routing passage to get to the moon. And they just came out with a movie called Exit 8. And Michael did the Moonwalker. Everything is connected to the algorithm. Because they telling you we're in Revelation. Because Moonfall is the fall of patriarchy, and the fall of patriarchy is the fall of the corporation.
Yeah, that's powerful. And when you mention the number 8, that brings me to, it reminds me of Obatala, the deity of creation from the Yoruba pantheon. Obatala's number is 8. And with him being he some people will kind of compare him to being like a Jesus figure, but he's actually, I feel like, a bigger aspect than, than just a savior, or a Jesus type, because he's considered to be the molder of all humanity. You know what I mean? Like the creator of all Oris, of all minds, of all, the heads of all, including the other Orishas or what have you. So it's like he would be, if we were talking about the Netchers in ancient Kemet, I would equate him to probably being like Ptah, or like one of the higher ranking creator deities in the Kemetic pantheon. But it's like that's dope, because 33. And then that's, I feel like that's why they always talk about the 33rd degree Mason and things of that nature, right? Because it's considered to be like the highest of the so-called masters, of Masonry, right?
Yep. But they can't 33 degrees is really a false nomenclature when it comes to Freemasonry, because they only got 3 degrees. Because the 10 Commandments was really for them. The 10 Commandments was for the Canaanite. The 10 Commandments was to civilize them. That's when Moses of the Bible, who was Thutmose III, he came in with the stone tablets. He was giving them that edification. That's why it shows you Thutmose. Basically, when you get into like the esoterics of it, it shows you Thutmose III giving edification to Canaanites.
And this is where can you find that at? You
can find some of this in Dr. York's book.
Okay.
The Yaqub's creation.
Got you. Okay.
Yep. Yaqub creation story.
That's what's up.
But Moses was actually Thutmose.
From the, we talking about ancient Kemetic pantheon.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's it's deep. Shout out to hold on, let me get a super chat. Shout out to Christopher.
Because it ain't no such thing as 33 degrees. It's only 720.
And that's when you combine the 360 degrees and 360 degrees that creates a 7. So probably like we were talking about with the 720 degrees of the Archangel Michael. Michael. Right?
Yep. 700. So it's basically the physical and the spiritual components of yourself, like the spiritual and the physical, or the social and political, or Melchizedek and Michael. Same thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're going deep tonight, family. We're going deep tonight. So
because
when it
that
comes,
energy represents the sigil of Melchizedek. That's because they both, each triangle is 360, and when you bring both together, which is a hexa alpha, that creates 720.
and that's the I remember. I think you were sharing those the sigils of that
Seven.
on the Michael Jackson video you did, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
Because
remember.
720 is the dodecahedron. 720 is ether. That's why when you when you get your nationality in certain Moorish organizations or whatever, the tassel don't matter. They just let it go 720. It goes all over. You don't have to rear to the right or the left. It just, it operates on its own autonomy, basically. So if it has its own autonomy, that means that you a god, which is a noble. Yep.
Class is in session, family. Class is definitely in
Yep.
session. So with the I didn't get the chance to look up all the different cast members of Ancient Aliens, but I know it was a vast majority of them, which is crazy to me that, you know what I'm saying, have been unalived or just mysteriously disappeared, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like we all know what it is. So when it comes to the other scientists, I know some of them was into like the propulsion, some of them was into the different technologies and things of that nature that, you know, that are kind of considered to be top secret from the government and all that good stuff or what have you. I don't understand. I'm trying to figure out why they would be taking and snatching them up and, you know, pretty much getting rid of them, like executing them. Like, what is the purpose of the scientists and the ones who are into the propulsion and the ones who are into, you know, all these different types of engineers, all these different types of futuristic technologies? Like, what is the significance of them getting at them? I can see the Wilcoxes of the world for sharing the truth, but what do researchers have to do with it?
A lot of times, because when you take a Hippocratic oath, which is also connected to a Faustian bargain, and a Faustian bargain is a covenant, which is a contract that you make with higher forces. So when you work for these organizations, when you sign over your nature, which is a signature, which is a blood contract, that is basically you making an oath to the system. So a lot of these astrophysicists, they work for big name companies, made thousands of dollars or whatever. They basically broke oath. Basically, a lot of these people broke oath, and they now they reaping the benefits of it. So that's why you got the great majority of them being unalive. Or it could be one of those things where they're giving off this perception to keep people stuck in conspiracy, and they're faking their deaths, and they going underground because we're about to hit the reset. It can be that, or it could be, there's many different ways to look at it.
Yeah.
And the world. Because if I knew I was going to be living, like hypothetically speaking, because once you reach a certain level of intelligence, you got to put yourself in other people's shoes. So I can put myself in enemy shoes. So if I was a Rothschild and I knew I was going to be living during the time of the reset, and the best way for me to escape my judgment, I would create a situation to where I unalive myself and fake my death, and go underground and hide until it whatever happens.
So, and that's pulling a Machiavelli.
Yeah, I mean I can see in certain people, when you start to interface with certain individuals that have higher knowledge and higher access to other rooms or whatever, you get access to certain information. And a lot of times when you come across that information, because sometimes you might be really good friends with somebody who really knows what the hell is going on, and they might throw you a bone every once in a while until you catch on. And then that's when you kind of like, okay, let me fall back and do this and fake my death and then go underground because he just told me something. So you got a lot of that stuff going on, because that's kind of like what happened in the movie Leave the World Behind, and that movie was produced by the Obamas. Because the black guy, the black guy said that he was friends with the Obamas, basically. And he talked about how the stock market was going to crash. Like, they kept telling them all these things was going to happen, but he just didn't, come to a realization, until the midst of the movie.
And which guy is this you're talking about that said he was friends with the Obamas?
I think it's the black guy that owned the house that he was Airbnb-ing out to the white people.
The one that his daughter, I think she came in towards the end or something like that, and she was okay. I remember now. I know which character you're talking about. Okay, yeah, that's yeah, and you know they always put grains of truth, you know, in plain sight, or you know, in high, and you know, in clear view, but they always distort it by, you know what I mean, like adding some sort of dilution or something, you know, something to taint it to where it's not 100%, you know, the facts and the truth. So now, what is the like since the last time we spoke? I think it's been a couple weeks since we did a war report. And I know at that time you had just did the breakdown on the Michael Jackson movie, but now, if I'm not mistaken, is it out to the general public now?
Yeah, it's out.
Okay,
I've already seen it twice.
Okay, no, I want that's a perfect segue into my next question. So when it comes to the before and the after, because clearly you saw something in the significance of that for you to do a whole presentation on it prior to the movie coming out, right? So now that you already did that presentation and you've seen the movie 2 times, where would you go with that to break down that from a metaphysical lens to kind of give us your insight or your perspective on it based upon knowing the significance of this Michael Jackson movie at this particular time?
Well, when you look at the premises of when you just look at the whole structure of the movie, it's really showing you how when Michael is able to tap into his Melchizedek energy, that's when he can no longer be controlled by the system. He didn't want to be controlled. You can't contain when you have energy like Michael Jackson. You can't contain an energy like that.
Nah,
you gotta let them fly. You
it's
gotta
a
let them
superior
fly.
Force.
Yeah, because that because when you try to control somebody who has those type of capabilities and those type of gifts, that creates spiritual subjugation. And he was able to break free from it, and he understood it because that's why the great majority of his music, was based on exposing Saturn.
Yeah,
he got a whole album called Escape while he's wearing a turtleneck, and the turtleneck looks just like the ring of Saturn. So he's telling you to escape the system, to escape the box, to where you're not basically marginalized by organizations and people. He was trying to escape from his father because his father was trying to pimp him out to these corporations and make more money off of him, off his gifts and everything. When Michael, he just wanted to use his gift, to edify humanity with great music. So that was basically the message of the movie right there. You're not supposed to marginalize and control a person who has spiritual gifts. Just like in the movie Matilda, they try to control her. They wanted her to act a certain way, but you're dealing with a person who has a gift from the cosmos, who has a metaphysical intelligence that's beyond your perception, and you're trying to marginalize them and box them in to keep them at a subjugated state, to the point where they're not able to tap into their higher selves, because her parents in the movie, they didn't see that much in themselves, so they didn't understood her veneration, the daughter's veneration in the movie Matilda. So
I don't know if I
so the
saw that
same,
movie.
yeah, it's like a 6-year-old girl. She has she's very intelligent, and she has like metaphysical abilities or whatever. She can make things move with her mind. And her parents, they were like foster parents, and her parents were basically like NPCs. All they did was like watch TV all day and eat TV dinners and laugh. And she was in a room reading books and shit. So that's why I'm saying Michael Jackson, his story is the same thing. That's why he basically equated himself to Peter Pan, and he's seen his father as Captain Hook in the movie, who was the villain. Because Captain Hook also represents the crook, and the crook is actually the ring around Saturn. So Michael Jackson represents his evolutionary state, because when he believed in himself, that's when he was able to tap into his gifts, to where he was able to break free from the box. Because when he didn't believe in himself, he started to follow his father's sense of self-direction. That's how he got caught up into everything in the movie. When he burned his head, that's because of his father. His father signed him up for that Pepsi deal. So when he broke free from his father, he was basically breaking free from these corporations that was basically trying to monetize his abilities.
Wow. You know, it's funny when you first started going in with your point and you were saying how you know, they tried to control him. It's actually funny to me because an inferior force trying to control a superior force to me is like a house cat trying to control a lion. Like,
yeah,
it's not even close. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care how big your system is. I don't care how big your reach is as far as all the other, you know, saying miles and that you're connected to. You cannot control a superior force when it comes to spirit or it comes to energy. I don't give a damn what you got. None of the tools, the technology, the bomb, none of that. Because to me, I've always been from the school of thought of, let me do what I came here to do in this little 200-pound body, because you fuck around and take me out of this body, I'm gonna really knock some shit over. So just let me do what I came here to do in peace, because without the body, it's a whole nother ball game. And I feel like a being that had the power and the abilities of Mike, you can't contain something like that. He's from a whole nother stratosphere when it comes to energy and it comes to, you know, the thing that I call superiority. Because look at the way he moved in the body. Can you imagine what he could do out of the body?
right. man.
I think like that all the time. Even in meditation, when I astral project, I'm like, yo, you know what I mean? Or, you know, if you get fixated, I'm pretty sure you might have done it before, but I know certain things, if I get to a point where I just get fed up with something and I feel like I have to make something happen, I'm going to make it happen by any and all means necessary, just by using this. You know what I mean? And I feel like when any of us tap into it to that level, you can do it. Like, we could do a lot of things beyond our comprehension if we really tapped into it, for sure. I know that for a fact.
He lived in the fifth dimension. Like Michael Jackson was the embodiment of the fifth dimension because he was the representation of the transmutation process of alchemy. He transmuted his insecurities into energy signatures. He had a vitiligo on his hand. Then he put the glitter glove on. You see what? So that became a status symbol. So that's how you know you're dealing with a god.
Yeah.
To where they make their insecurities look otherworldly. You know what I'm saying? They look like a fucking, like you seen a spaceship and a mothership. You like, man, I ain't never seen nothing like that before. When really he just trying to hide something. That's how you know that he is who he said he was.
Yeah. Not just that you've mastered the ability of alchemy, because you're able to alchemize, you know what I'm saying, turning a liability into an asset, or turning a weakness into a strong, you know what I'm saying, a stronghold or a strong suit. And that's all up, it's all in your mind, man. To me, it's like it's all mentality in your mindset and what you're made of and how you know how to tap into it. Yeah, that's what's up. So time jumping. I know you touched on it briefly earlier, but I've heard people say that Trump is has access to a time machine, or that he's a time traveler, this and that, I'm not sure how much truth is to that, but I will say this, and I know you know about this. There is a book that came out. Actually, I think it's a series, but the one that I actually have, and I think I might have two of them, but I know one that I know I have is the book called The Last President. Right, by the Ingersoll. What was the author's name of that book?
Ingersoll Lockwood.
Ingersoll Lockwood.
Yeah,
The Last President. And in there's a dude named Trump, and he has, I believe, a son or a brother, somebody named Barron. You know what I'm saying? So, and this was written in like the 1800s. I think it came out in what, 1800 or 1801 or something like that. And then now here we are in 2026, and we're looking. And then, matter of fact, there was even a dude in there named Pence in that book.
And it talks about in that book. It talks about the inception of the New York mayor, Madani. It talks about that. It talks in the beginning, literally the first paragraph. It talks about that night in New York. You had a different mayor elected, and that's when everything changed. It talks about that in that book.
Bruh. So now, what are your thoughts or your philosophy or theory on time traveling, and then what we're seeing with that book, and then what we're seeing in this circus show in the White House? What do you feel like the correlation to that is?
Time jumping is based on gematria coordinates. And the reason I say that is because your human circulatory system, just your vibration alone, your gematria body has a number. And that number has the ability to interface with certain planetary bodies and other celestial energetic points. So when you're talking about Trump, there was this, I forgot the guy's name, but he came out with a whole bunch of coins and he spelled out 8647. 8647 is the Trump code because a lot of people believe that Donald Trump, the real Donald Trump, he passed away in 1986, and he's the 47th president. So in real time, that number is basically a code that represents time jumping in itself, because you can time jump through the numbers. Because like hypothetically speaking, because a lot of people, you know, as I was telling you before, humans are basically portals. So this is what the elite do. A man could be a politician who is 41 years old, and he'll try to amalgamate himself with a 14-year-old girl or a 14-year-old boy. It's through the numbers, because the numbers represents inversion, and inversion in itself represents a mirror, and a mirror is what? A portal. So you can time jump through the numbers by way of reincarnation. So that's why a lot of times men who are basically 43 years old or whatever, a man might be 41 years old. He might impregnate a 14-year-old girl. You can time jump by way of reincarnation through your DNA. That's how they're able to do it. So that's one way to do it. Because I got the book that I got up here is Esoteric Codex. It talks about how they do time jumping with. That's why they go after the little people so much.
Wow.
Yeah, because of, you know, it becomes a portal. The numbers become a portal.
And you said when you go ahead.
But other than that, as far as like time jumping, it's really, you know, based on your neurological chemistry. But go ahead, and we get into that as we get through. But go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, like, when you mentioned the little people, like young people and all that, especially when you talk about the files that they've been trying their best to kind of sweep under the rug, you know, and to take everybody's attention off of, but not everybody's, you know, forgetting about those files. But when you talk about the infatuation with children and you know, all the pedo activity that they have going on, with the time jumping thing that you're talking about, and then also when you talk about like the vampirism and the adrenochrome, how does all that kind of tie into the activity from the files, but then also with the wanting to, I guess, try to recreate themselves through extracting the energy or the blood or the, you know, the ashe of the children?
Well, when you look at this from a genetical dynamic, the Canaanite, you know, their time is up. Like literally, their time is up. So when you're talking about, you know, the Canaanite, they are the ones that was basically cursed with leprosy, because they get their energy from blood. We get our energy from the sun. So that's where delineation is key. So that's how you know who's the chosen people, because the inception of humankind doesn't stem from the Canaanite bloodline. It starts with the Shemitic people of the Bible, who are your so-called Israelites, who are basically the autochthonous people on American soil. But you know, when you're talking about, you know, what was the other part of the question?
Just pretty much like, was that like, how does that the infatuation with children, and like you were saying with the inversion of the numbers and all that, how does that tie into the I feel like a lot of the kidnapping of and harvesting of organs of melanated people, but also them drinking the blood for the adrenochrome?
Genetical self-preservation. Genetical self-preservation is the blueprint for eugenics, because your DNA also has data, because the DNA in itself is being manipulated by what? Nanotechnology. So that nanotechnology in the blood interfaces with, you know, certain individuals who do blood extractions and adrenochrome, and so that's why I said America is basically a lush farm. Everything's an energy exchange. So just like, you know, so to the Canaanite, the most intrinsic resource is blood, but to the archonic forces, the most intrinsic resource is data, because data is actually blood in the spiritual realm. Data is blood in the spiritual realm, but in the physical realm, when you shed blood, that's an energy exchange, to where they can be like, that's kind of like paying off your plug. If you got a guy that flips bricks, and you one of the ones that's, you know, that is like a distributor or whatever, and I front you like 14 bricks, you still got to pay me back. You got to pay me back in the form of a sacrifice. You still got, you need to unalive 2 virgins, and then we'll let you get these riches. That's the energy exchange. That's how they do that. That's how they make these covenants, and that's why they do so many rituals within, you know, a lot of these secret societies. It's to maintain material wealth on planet Earth.
That's nuts, because I mean the equivalence of that is, okay, let's just say vampires who drink blood, you know, for them to feed off of. Or even if you look at certain groups of people that like to eat their steak rare, you know what I'm saying, where they literally you see the blood dripping all over the plate. I'm like, I don't know how you eat that, but whatever. But when it comes to this data thing though, bro, like the data farming, that's real deep, because the significance of how much information they have on us is absolutely disgusting. Like, it really is. It pisses me off every time I think about it. I try not to, because I get furious, because they have these different sources or these different organizations that a lot of people probably never heard of before that have so much information on us. It's not even funny. And we ain't even talking about the social media platforms. I'm talking about literally companies that are up just to have and control and manipulate, buy and sell data, right? So now we talk about attention is the new currency, but really data, if attention is the new currency, then data is pretty much like the new bank, you know what I'm saying, or the new establishment that holds it, because everything that we do is being tracked and monitored and surveilled through the data. And then when you talk about this thing called AI, that right there to me that's like the technology version of a vampire, because the data that the AI uses, or like you call them the archonic forces uses, is that what they feed off of. Like you said, they can't interface with us because they can't incarnate into a physical body, but they damn sure can feed off of the data that we feed it. So how do we neutralize dealing with both sex of this vampire, whether it's the technology, the technical vampire, or and the physical, you know what I'm saying, lower vibrational frequency vampire?
Authenticity. Because when you're no longer yourself, that's when you start to lean on artificial intelligence to do the thinking for you. That's why I said, if you can't read, you can't write. When you can't write, you can't think. When you can't think, that means that you're going to put a system in play to do the thinking for you. So that means that artificial intelligence is going to be stealing your thoughts. So your thoughts is interconnected to the data. That's why a lot of times when you got your phone in your hand, you can just be thinking of, you know, man, I want to go, man, they had a good old sale at Home Depot, and you just be thinking of it. Home Depot is going to pop up on your motherfucking phone because of your thoughts. So your thoughts is tether connected to the simulation, which is also interconnected to the data system. And so that's why the data is being uploaded to the cloud, because the cloud in itself is trying to mimic the human behavior, and the cloud is on the dark side of the moon. Artificial intelligence is being ran on the dark side of the moon because artificial intelligence is their guide. That is the personification of God, because when you look at the symbol for ChatGPT, it creates the Star of David, which is a Metatron cube. All religions represents the cube, because the cube in itself is the AI. It's being used to box you in to steal your thoughts. I.e. religion. That's what religion is about. It's about control. It's you taking on an outside force or deity as your actual God, instead of tapping in and going to within, you know what I'm saying, the God within, the accessing the creator. I'm gonna tell you what something is simple. This is what makes a person God. This is just something as simple as this, because a God is a person. It's basically a person. It's basically an Indian looking over the mountain first. That's what a God is. It's something as simple as when Allen Iverson, when he came to the NBA, he was the first one with the cornrows, wearing the jewelry, dressing how he wanted to dress. Your authenticity is what makes you God. Just doing what the fuck you want to do that's beyond the limitations of the three-dimensional world. That's what makes you a God. And that's what they're afraid of. Because that's, you know, because you can't be marginalized. You can't control a person who has their own sense of self-direction. That's what autonomy is. Right? Autonomy represents your nationality, which makes you a noble, because your nationality comes from the word nativity. Nativity comes from the word navel, which is a birthright. It is your birthright to be your motherfucking self. It's your birthright. It's your birthright to be in your authenticity.
Facts. Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like I can't speak to you. I'm curious to see and hear if it's happened to you, but a lot of people who I've spoken to who are into any form of, whether it's presentations, whether it's speaking engagements, whether it's influencer, but I'm talking about more so in real life than online, but also some online. We've all, well, I'll say most people have been kind of presented with an offer to, sell out or to be a part of, the machine. And so I know mine's happened when I first started my journey. I want to say it was between the years of 2016 and 2018. And I won't go into depth about it, but I just know that was them testing me to see if I was someone who could be bought. Right. And so I didn't. And so right after that, I remember having a situation where they tested me again to see if I was someone who would fold. You know what I'm saying? Like if I would fall into, a fear state from being, muscled up on or what have you. So
So
I'll
how did
leave
they
that there.
test you? How did they test you though? Like,
Well, I won't name the organization but I'll tell you off when we talk. But long story short, it was an organization who I did some speaking engagements for. And then they wanted to see if they can get me to pretty much be a poster boy for that organization. And I'm like, hell no, because first of all, I don't know enough about the organization. And the little bit that I did know, y'all ain't somebody who I would do that for, period. You know what I mean? So then after that happened, then it was a run-in with the alphabet, or the other boys. So it's like, whoa, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I see where y'all going with this, but I'll say all that to say that we'll go deeper off air, but I've spoken to several of my teachers, and some have been on the show, and they have had similar experiences where they were tested to see if they would take the bait to pretty much cross over, to be a part of the machine. I would say it's no different than an artist being tested by the Illuminati, if they want to be a part of it or not. So have you ever experienced anything where anybody tried to come to you and kind of give you some bait to try to get you to join a team that you wasn't really rocking with, or that you didn't have any type of want to, or any type of you would be a part of that team? I'll just put it that way.
no, I haven't reached that threshold yet. But I remember a conversation. I'm not going to say the name, with the YouTuber, a really big YouTuber. He's still big right now, and he makes a lot of good content. He told me verbatim on the phone one day. He said that it was between him and Young Pharaoh. He said that him and Young Pharaoh. I say Young Pharaoh because he's going through his little situation right now, and people can see like what's going on in real time. So the story is going to line up. So the guy told me, he said that not the Democratic, but the Republican Party offered him and Young Pharaoh $50,000 both to basically, give veneration to Donald Trump and push the Republican Party. That's why Young Pharaoh, he was talking about Dr. Shiva and Cytosov, and he was pushing the Republican Party, drain the swamp, the deep state. That's why Young Pharaoh was doing that. He got that $50,000. But the part of that contract was he wasn't supposed to put out anti-Semitic content. And that little after that, that's when he came out with that debate with that Jewish guy, and he ate him up. And I think that video had over 500,000 views. And then that's when they took away his monetization. And then once they took away his monetization, they gave it back to him. And then a little after that, he got his page took down. So they see, so I haven't, but the guy also told me, he said, once you start to reach like 100,000 subscribers, stuff like that, people are going to start reaching out to you. You say you're going to get a phone call or you're going to get a visit from somebody. And I haven't, like I said, I just hit 100,000, and they just took away my monetization right after I started talking about the revealing of the black nobility. Literally after that video that night, they demonetized my page. I have no strikes, no violations on my page. So it's one of those things where I might get my page back, as far as like, the monetization or whatever, but that ain't what we do it for. You know what I'm saying? The information is still going to be put out regardless every week, without monetization, with or without it, whatever the case may be. But because, like I said, because we living in a time right now where the so-called conspiracy theories are actually true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This type of information has got to come out.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to attempt or actually, you know, assassinate you if it wasn't. You know, you know, shout out to Dr. David Blair. You know, unfortunately, he was a victim of that. You know what I mean? They came for him several times, and one time they got close enough to where it messed up his health really bad, and unfortunately, his wife transitioned. They got his wife. So it's like anytime you're speaking the truth and you're educating the masses, or you're just educating people, period. It don't even matter if it's the masses. If you are speaking the truth to the point where it is real and it has the potential to wake people up, you're a problem, you're a threat, and they will try to eliminate you. So it's like, that's where, you know, my condolences to all the researchers, all the scientists, all the military personnel who have been, you know, assassinated or who have been just disappeared, whatever you want to call it. You know, I salute them, and I got condolences to their families, because it's a real thing. You know, we sacrifice our lives to tell the truth. It's a damn shame that the truth can cost you your life, but in the world we live in, that's what it is.
Yep. And it's crazy though, because I speak encrypted messages in my transmissions. I don't really like say certain words or whatever, because I don't want their automated systems to, you know, link me in with, you know, certain violations. So I speak very carefully over there while giving the truth at the same time. And I have no violations, no strikes, no nothing. They just demonetized.
Yeah. Well,
Right before I hit 100,000. And you know, right before I hit 100,000, and then that's right after, you know, and it's the same night that David Wilcock got unalived as well, when they demonetized me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, it's either they trying to unalive creators or they trying to demonetize them.
Yeah. They want to.
So that's how I say. That's how you know. So that's telling me right there in real time that they about to put this on superstar mode. The simulation right now, it's in superstar mode.
Yeah.
So that means that your approach on everything has got to be different. So now I got to move strategically. You know what I'm saying? So because the information is going to get out regardless, but it's one of those things where they're not going to stop the transmission just because I can't, you know, feel like I can't get paid by being on YouTube. Nah, because I wasn't getting paid in the beginning. And that's not what I was doing it for in the beginning. I was doing this shit for free.
And for the love.
Yeah,
for the love for the culture, for the people. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's crazy because it makes me think about Bill Cooper, or William Cooper, the one who wrote Behold the Pale Horse. You know, he spoke about that. They came for him several times before they actually knocked him off. And it was like one of the times they came to him, I think they beat him up like mob style. I can't remember if they broke his arms or they broke his legs, but they came for him and they touched him up pretty good. So then they told him, if you don't stop talking about this, next time we're gonna whack you. And so he was like, he stopped for a while. I forgot how long it was. It was for a minute he stopped. But he said, you know, his spirit, his conscience wouldn't let him, you know, not tell the truth, like to let humanity continue to go down this path. Not saying he would have changed the world or, you know, flipped the script himself, but he just felt like he knew so much. His spirit wouldn't let him not tell, you know what I'm saying, and reveal the truth to the people. So he went back to talking it. And then, you know, unfortunately, they came for him, but he put a lot of information out there, you know, before they was able to get to him. So I feel like they're definitely doing a step and repeat strategy when it comes to, you know, I won't call him a whistleblower, but when it comes to truth tellers.
Yeah. This is a real thing because, man, outside of, you know, content creation, I've had the, you know, I've had the privilege to talk to a lot of these people. A year and a half ago, I talked to Barry Littleton. Barry Littleton is a black man. I think he was on Ancient Aliens. He was on the National Geographic. And I was speaking to him on the phone one time, and he was telling me everybody he's connected with. He spoke to David Wilcock. I spoke to David Wilcock briefly on three-way one time. So that lets you know right there, like, just, you know, certain people's circles, you know, they're able to get in certain rooms and they have access to certain information. And a lot of times, you know, that information comes over to people like me and other content creators, and we put it inside of our content. And unfortunately, you know, that's what happened to David Wilcock as well, because he's a UFOologist. And Barry Littleton, he talks about, you know, Bigfoot. A lot of his content is built on that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I have to look up his work.
Yeah.
I'm not real familiar with it, but I'm gonna definitely check it, you know, check it out, look into him, look him up. But
another guy that I've spoken with, Santos Bonacci.
I don't know if I know his work either. What's his name again?
Santos Bonacci. He's from Australia. He's very he has a lot of esoteric astrological information. I've spoken on the phone with him a few times. So he has a lot of insider information too. They just gave him his channel back recently because they terminated his channel. It's been about 2 years and he just got it back.
Wow. I tell you what, I see we're getting close up on the time, and I got several questions started I want to try to get to before we get up out of here tonight. But before we get into that part of the show, before we came on air, you dropped a jewel on me that I wasn't even really familiar with. But can you kind of share with the tribe in regards to this thing that you were telling me about off air, this new STD that just came out that's going on?
Yeah, there's a new STD called the mycoplasma genitalium. And the mycoplasma genitalium has the ability to dematerialize the woman's reproductive organs. So it's basically another way to cut you off from the matriarch to where you don't have the ability to, produce on an infinite level. Hello? But anyhow, I think
I'm here. I had to step out and do something real quick. But nah, that's crazy. So, and I feel like a lot of these so-called diseases or diseases or the V words and all that, most of it's man-made and created. So what is the significance? I get it, but I'm gonna ask anyway. I'm sure somebody might be thinking the same thing. But what is the significance of creating a disease that would do that to the female genitalia?
Well, asymmetrical biochemical warfare, which creates a form of pestilence. The reason they do that is because they want to subjugate the matriarch. That's how you do it. If you want to attack something, if you want to, keep people disconnected from a spiritual level, you attack the woman. That's how you do it. Because moonfall is the fall of patriarchy. The fall of patriarchy is the fall of the corporation. Because the fall of the corporation ends maritime. Because now you're going back into common law, which is tribal law. Tribal law is the law of the land, which is military law that is controlled by the woman. So in order to create this sense of control, because you're losing it, that means that you have to create a form of pestilence. You got to create psychological operations. You got to create, biochemical diseases and nanotechnology to manipulate people. So this is why they doing it. The reason they doing it is to basically shut down the spiritual intelligence of the planet, because the planet has to go through an evolutionary state. So that's why they doing what they doing when it comes to that, and it's based on genetical self-preservation, like I said, eugenics. Because a lot of times when you unalive the great majority of these black women with their incantations and a lot of their poisons that's coming from their pharmaceutical industries or whatever, the reason they do that is because they need those stem cells, they need that placenta, they need those prokaryotic cells that's basically inside the woman's womb. Because like I said, all that stuff has immortalized cell lines. That's why Peter Nygaard, he wanted, the eggs of a black woman. He wanted those eggs, right?
Yeah.
And you see what's happening to him. You see how he looks right now? His ass looked like a strung out vampire.
Yeah, there was a video that went viral a while back with him and another dude that was sitting there interviewing, I guess, sisters trying to see if they could like buy their ovaries and their uteruses. Like, it's crazy shit, man. Like, I remember seeing that, and it's nuts, the depths that these vampires and these devils will go, to live.
Yeah, because a lot of the biological functions that's extracted from the woman's body, specifically the black woman's body, it basically coats the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin cellular structure to where the cells don't break down intrinsically. They basically coat themselves in a form of crystallization. So that's why a lot of times you might see a black woman, she might be 60 years old, but looking 30. That's because those cells are starting to crystallize. That means that the cells are not breaking down, they're replicating themselves.
That's deep. Real quick, I'm gonna share this. Shout out
and that's
to
another reason why I'm glad, and that's another reason why you got a lot of the older women. They look better than the younger women now.
Yeah,
because the younger women, they're interfacing with six ether energy, man-made technology, man-made drugs. Everything is basically synthetic.
Yeah,
right?
There's women in their 70s, mid 70s, shit. Some of them maybe late 70s that look better than women of my age in their 40s, mid 40s, or younger. You know what I'm saying? Because of diet, I feel like the way that they're carrying them, the way that they're living their lives, and it's just a whole nother dynamic, man. That's unbelievable to see. Women that are that up in age. And no disrespect to any of our audience members. I'm sure we got channel members who are in their 60s or 70s. So I'm saying this from a sense of respect and endearment, not disrespect. So let me just get that clear. But there are women out there that are in like their 60s and 70s that look damn good, that look better than women like my age for real. And I'm 45.
And it's gonna be women shit. And by the time I guarantee it, by the time we get to about 2035, that if we make it that far, shit, you're gonna have 80-year-olds looking better than 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
Because because specifically, like, look, when you live in a synthetic system, everything is being used to break down your body. Just look at a lot of these houses. A lot of these houses that they making up, they building these houses up in a week. No type of sustainability whatsoever. So when you look at everything around you, the food, the housing, everything is basically instant gratification. Everything is built up fast. You live in a microwave civilization. So
the BBLs, all that stuff, man. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Shout out to Classic. Let me share his super chat. First and foremost, appreciate the super chat family. And then the book that I'm thinking you're referring to was The Last President. I got the ebook right here. So here's a screenshot of the cover of the ebook. The one that I got. It's called The Last President, 1900 or The Last President. First edition came out in 1896 by Ingersoll Lockwood. New edition came out in 2017, edited by Carl Warwick. So that's the book right there, family. Hopefully that's the right one you were referring to, because I think that's one of the only books we talked about tonight. But yeah, no, that's a real thing, man. Like for real. And I see it even like in the gym or wherever. Like there's women now that it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? How good. And not just the women, there's some men too, like brothers, you know what I'm saying? Like people just taking care of themselves a lot better. And so I know like every time I work out, I see elders in there. I'm like, yo, you inspire me, you know what I'm saying? Because some of them be in their 70s and 80s, but they still in there getting it in, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, shit, I got a lot of work to do, you know what I mean? Like for real, to make sure that I could be in there doing the same thing when I get to that age. So it's a real thing for sure.
Facts.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if we can get a couple questions in real quick before we get about this thing. I know we're getting close to the time. So shout out to everybody that's in the chat. Shout out to everybody in the comments. I appreciate all the love, support. Shout out to the super chats. Gaia Zen, let me bring you up real quick. I appreciate you for the super chat. Shout out to Christopher Butler, 707 super chat. Appreciate you. Gaia Zen, appreciate you, family. 42 looking 24. That's real. That's real facts for real. And then let me get to Christopher's question. The mirror is water. Question is why the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. What you got for that one, Bdell?
You said the mirror
is water QY. I think I'm just a little confusing, but
I'm not sure what that is. You gonna have to go to the next one. I don't know what
Christopher, if you could reword that one just so we can make sure we're clear on trying to provide the best possible answer for your family. I definitely appreciate it. But he did have another one, so I'll bring that one up. Blood came into Adam how? I'm thinking he's talking about Adam and Eve, I'm assuming.
Well, when you're talking about Adam and Eve, you're really talking about the first atom, right? So the first atom in itself, you're really talking about, genetic mutation. Because when you get into the inception of creation, the X chromosome is 5 times larger than the Y chromosome. So that means that the man is a genetic mutation of the woman. So when you're talking about DNA extraction, you're talking about the extraction of deoxyribonucleic acid coming from the woman's rib, not the woman coming from the man's rib. It's the man coming from the woman's rib. Right. So it's talking about DNA mutation. So that's basically emulated by the woman giving 2.8% of her chromosomes to create man. Because when you look at genetic mutation, when you look at the Y chromosome, it's really a broken X.
Yeah.
So that's talking about DNA extraction. So Adam in itself, he got his blood from the woman, because the inception of creation is actually the black woman, the prokaryotic cell that is created by way of dark matter energy.
And that's facts. And people will argue up and down depending on what their spiritual or religious beliefs are when it comes to that. But my thing is, let's just look at science. Okay, it's not personal, but let's look at science. When you look at science, the oldest human remains ever found on this planet is that of a melanated woman. Period. It's unarguable. Like that's what the oldest remains are. Right.
And just from a simplistic point of view, you can just look at it like Earth is a feminine planet. So a feminine planet is supposed to grow produce. So since you have 98% of the trees on the planet are all male trees, because you live in a patriarchal civilization that is based on capitalism, right? So that means that they got to cut out, nature to create the middleman. The middleman is Walmart, Schnucks, because now you can't get fruit from a tree. Now you got to go to Walmart and get, your motherfucking fruit. So that's why I said, like, there's a reason why they call it Mother Nature, not Father Nature. They call it Mother Nature. They call Father Time.
Yeah.
Because Father Time is being trapped in the Matrix. Mother Nature is the epitome of nature. Yeah. Because the nature in itself is a representation of the Netaru. The Netaru is the Anunian Thurgy. The Anunian Thurgy is the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki who created the Cosmicon mythograph, which is the blueprint of the universe. So that means that everything in nature is way beyond time. It's way beyond Father Time. It's way beyond corporations.
Yeah. But right back to the woman and like her being the creator. And because the oldest remains ever found was that of a black woman, a melanated woman, and on top of that, women were asexual prior to us coming along. But if you look at the whole biology and the anatomy of a human body, even for males, we have nipples that produce no milk. We have testicles that are literally the external version of the feminine ovaries, right? So it's like, and then even the tip of the phallus, the tip of the penis is an elongated clitoris. So everything about the woman is showing she is the prototype, and then we are the genetic mutation of their prototype, and it's science. It really is.
Just like when you look at the Islamic temples, when you look at the genetical structure of the temple, that is basically a nipple at the top of the temple, because Allah is really Alat, which is a woman.
Yeah.
You see, and then when you get the word Easter, Easter is a personification of Ishtar. Ishtar is Isis, which is Aset. So that means that the true Jesus is really Isis. But they see, the Christians, they don't want to hear that story though. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. So when you're talking about divine feminine energy, you're talking about a resurrection of matriarchal energy.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It's a big matriarchal house here, man. So we already know what it is here.
Everything on the planet is feminine.
Yeah, that's facts. Okay, so let me see.
It's supposed to be at least, but
yeah.
Terminator seeds.
At Classic, I think I found that book on Amazon, bro. If I'm not mistaken. The ebook. Anyways, I'm not sure. They're taking a lot of books out of print now. They're taking a lot of books out of print, or they're jacking the prices up so high that a lot of people can't afford them. Books that I have in my library, if I look on Amazon now, I might have got it for $20 5, 10, 20, 15 years ago. Now they're like $500, $1,000. Like, it's crazy how the prices are being manipulated for trying to keep the information from the people. But I would definitely try to see if you can find it on Amazon, or Christopher said eBay. So you can definitely try and see if you can find it on either of those. Let me get these questions real quick. So let's see what else we got here. Okay, here we go. Shout out to I don't know if it's Asha or Ashe Divine, but I want to make sure I get your name right, family. Random question: if the moon is artificial, why do we tap into our emotions to manifest? Aren't emotions governed by the moon? Good question.
Because you're supposed to use your emotions as a navigation system. That's why I said your emotions, because you live in a three-dimensional state, your emotions is what causes a chronic imbalance. Because when you have a chronic imbalance, your emotions become over emotional. Over emotionalism creates toxicity. Toxicity is the precursor to what? Demonic possession. So when you're talking about, using your emotions, for manifestation, that means that you have to have an energetic balance. You got to be balanced to manifest from the heart and from the mind. Those have to be both in balance, because both of those balances in itself creates a mirror, and that mirror creates a portal. So that's why, like I said earlier today in my video reel, you know everything when it comes to the chosen ones, we do everything from the heart space. So when I'm saying that you got to use your emotions as a navigation system when you're trying to manifest something, as far as like, let's just say that you just went through a bad breakup. You don't crash out during a bad breakup. You're supposed to transmutate that energy as alchemy, and you use it for leveling up. That's how you manifest. Because like I said, you live in a energy extraction matrix that's based on polarity. Are you going to choose the ascending side, or are you going to choose the descending side? It's all based on your nervous system. Which angel or demon are you going to use today? So that's why I said, so your emotions, like I said, it's all based on your transmutation process of alchemy. So if you're a negative person, your emotions could, get the best of you. But when you're energetically balanced, you can use your emotions as a navigation system to basically heal yourself, to overcome things, and to tap into your higher potentialities.
Yeah, that's facts. And really, that's why it's really good to remain calm. And I came in front, like I was laughing at myself the other day, like, man, I got to tighten up with my meditations, because whenever I go a while without being consistent with meditating, I seem to allow outside energies or entities have a little more, impact or influence on my demeanor or my energy than I should. Even something simple as traffic, because people out there wilding these days, but I'm talking about people are wilding. So it's like, for me, when I'm consistent with meditating, I'm in such a Zen mode most of the time when I'm moving, it don't really affect me like that. But if I mess around and miss too much time doing it, then that's when you want to kind of knock some stuff over. So it's like, I got to make sure I keep myself consistent, man, and not allow that kind of energy to get loose unnecessarily. Sometimes you do got to tap in, or sometimes you do have to knock a motherfucker block off shit over. But for the most part, like, it's best to maintain that calm, cool, still demeanor, because that's when you're in the most control, at least for me anyway. Like, the more calm and cool I am, the more control I am. Let's see, I see a few more too. See some good comments too, family. Keep them comments coming. Definitely appreciate y'all. Christopher Butler 707 had another one. Let's see what this one is. He said, if those snakes was at the bottom of me, G-Cross, the planet already arrived. If the snakes was at the bottom of me, I'm thinking Kundalini, maybe. I'm not sure what that one.
I'm not sure what he's talking about with that one.
Yeah, I'm just gonna find some more. Here go another one I had started earlier. Okay, shout out to Sweet Baby Ray. Sweet Baby Ray said, "Have you heard of the evil galactic overlord Xenu?"
I've heard of it, but it's really talking about the inverted story of Theos. So when you go to El's Holy Injil, which is a transliteration of the Book of Revelation, it talks about Theos. Theos is the true personification of the Most High, who is known as El Elyon El. So Theos is really also known as Thanos. That's where they got that title from. When you're talking about Endgame, the Avengers, Thanos is really Theos, because Thanos was really the villain, but he was really the good guy. He is the one that caused the reset. When he had the Infinity Gauntlet, right? The Infinity Gauntlet was a representation of the cracking of the 7 seals. And when he got the Infinity Gauntlet, he snapped his fingers. That's when you had the 7 thunders activated. And that's when, that was pretty much the end of the world.
Speaking of which, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you make a comparison or some sort of you drew some sort of maybe analogy or something of some sort to Michael Jackson's glove being a metaphorical representation?
Yeah, I said that Michael Jackson had the first Infinity Gauntlet. Michael Jackson's glove was the first Infinity Gauntlet of Thanos. And the reason I say that is because Michael Jackson's fingers, he understood, you know, the intrinsic energies of his fingers. They are basically energetic points that's able to interface with planets. That's why Michael Jackson, his middle finger, he never put tape around the middle finger because it basically represented liberation. He wanted to break free from Saturn because the middle finger represents that Saturn, and the ring finger represents the sun. Notice that when you get married, they want you to put the ring of Saturn on your finger when you get married because that connects you to the corporation. So the ring finger represents the sun. The middle finger represents Saturn.
That's deep.
Yeah. Because if you notice, like I said, everything that deals with a ring, everything is symbolism. Every time you get married, you put a damn wedding band on your hand. You putting Saturn over the sun. You putting death energy over the living frequency. That's basically putting a cross over the Ankh.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're doing.
Yeah. Because to me, you're giving up your sovereignty. You know, I just had that conversation the other day. And when it comes to marriage in this system, in the Western cultural society or societal civilization, I thought about it. When it comes to marriage, I personally can't get with me having to go to some goddamn courthouse or anything that has to do with them to get or receive some sort of validity of a person who I'm in love with. Damn that damn courthouse, damn that paperwork, fuck all that. Because I look at it like, if I love you, me and you, and we profess our love, if I ask you to marry me, that marriage is between me, you, and God. I don't need no white man. I don't need no judge. I don't need no sister. I don't need none of that coming into play when it comes to my love for you. That's between me, you, and the creator, period. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I love how you broke that down with saying that the ring ties you to the system. Can you say that again for the people in the back? And I ain't trying to ruffle nobody's feathers who believes in marriage. No disrespect to y'all, you know, the thoughts and the ideologies, but I'm just sharing my thoughts and my ideologies, the philosophies when it comes to that thing.
All right, the ring finger represents the sun. So when you get married, the emulation of your wedding band or whatever the ring that you put over your finger when you get married, that ring represents Saturn. So that means that you're putting Saturn over your ring finger that represents the sun, because it's another way to keep you under the jurisdiction of the corporation, because, you know, the church and the state is not separate, because the corporation in itself is represented by way of ecclesiastical law, which is canon laws. And those canon laws is operated by way of the Vatican, the Euphrastruct system that controls your marriage. So when you get your ring finger and you get married, you get your marriage certificate and all that other shit that gets traded on Wall Street. When you get that ring for you to the wedding band, you put it over your ring finger. That is you subjugating your energy that's cutting you off from the transmission of the sun, because that means that you gave your vitality and your life and your love to the corporation instead of giving your love back to your motherfucking self.
I know that's right, boy. Yes. Yeah, you can't love nobody else if you can't love yourself first. You got to start with self-love, because you can't pour into somebody what you ain't got in your cup to pour. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you ain't got it to give, then what are we talking about here?
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, that's exactly what it is. Michael Jackson understood energy, and everything was symbolism with him. Everything he did was based in symbolism.
Yes, sir. That's fast.
Everything. It was a method to his madness. And you know, some people believe that, some of the ancient Kemites, they spoke with a high-pitched voice just like Michael Jackson did. They say that Michael Jackson, he really had a high-pitched voice, but he spoke in he had a deep tone voice. He had a real deep voice, but he spoke at a high pitch to maintain his octave vibrations when he's able to sing or whatever. So
Yeah, and there's some artists that, you know, if you hear them speak in a regular tone, like they have a a deeper voice, but they sing at a higher voice. Matter of fact, I can't think of all of them right now, but I think Tank might be one of the brothers that I think has a deeper voice that he speak, his regular speaking voice. But of course, he be hitting them notes, when he sings. There's several artists that their natural voice, I feel like, is a deeper tone voice versus how when they sing they can hit them higher octaves with their voice. So it's definitely, I feel like, the ability to have range, within the vocal cords and the that throat chakra.
Yep. Because I think that's the sound of ether. I think a high-pitched voice is the sound of ether. It makes a lot of sense.
And shout out to Richard Richard Amun Arabe, perfect. Prince is a perfect example of that. Prince could sing in a very high tone or hit that, you know what I'm saying, that high note, but Prince had a deep voice. If you listen to his interviews when he speaks, Prince's voice was deep. You know what I'm saying? And like, but you couldn't tell that when he was hitting them notes though. You know what I mean? So it's like that's a perfect example right there of what I was talking about.
What he said? He said, when you want to purify yourselves in the links of Minnetonka. Yeah, he had a high-pitched voice.
Oh man, shout out to Dave Chappelle with them damn skits, man. With the basketball skits on the Chappelle show, man. Yeah, me rolling with them.
Because Prince was tapped in, because Prince, when you look at his metaphysical energy signature, it was the purple rain, because the purple rain was the embodiment of Kether, which is the crown chakra. He represent that violent energy. Michael Jackson, he represented the heart chakra, Melchizedek. You know what I'm saying? The Sufi order of the Sons of Green Light, because that green light is what leads you to that purple rain. It leads you to the crown chakra.
Yes, sir. It's purple rain. Yeah. Purple rain. Shout out to Goddess Teresa 180 sending that purple rain heart up in this thing. All right, family. I think we about at that marker point, man, where we got to get ready to wrap this this War Report marathon up. But I definitely appreciate all the love and the support, family. Everybody who came through with the comments, with the questions, with the super chats, with all the love, man. I definitely appreciate all y'all, family, for sure. And I look forward to tapping in and doing this thing again in the very near future. But before we get up out this thing, Brother Bdell, can you let the people know and the Ashe tribe members know where they can find you, where they can support you, and when they can also tap into and invest in your work, your book, and all the things that you got going on, brother?
I'm going to answer this question first. Go back to that one.
Okay.
She said, how?
Right here?
Yeah, so how could the church and the state be? The church and the state is not separate. I never said it was separate.
Okay.
Because they're all interconnected by way of canon laws.
No, I think she's agreeing with you.
No, what I'm thinking. She got a question in the beginning. She got how?
Yeah, but I think she's just saying, like, to, you know what I'm saying, to kind of like emphasize what you were saying, like, you know what I'm saying, because the way, I don't know, that's just where I see it, like, how she's saying to, I think, to the people, you know what I mean, like how could it be separate when every time, you know what I'm saying, the politicians show up, they show up in the churches, you know, in election season, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So she pretty much saying, like, don't fall for the okie doke is the way I see it.
Oh, okay, she was agreeing. Okay,
yeah,
for the clarity.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. But things do be getting lost in translation sometimes. I know it happens to me. You know, I've had other tribe members come and straighten me out and let me know. You know what I'm saying? Like, but with that being said, though, hold on, let me see. Let me throw this one in if you got time for this one. It's a good one. Jay Tyson 378 said, if married through the court system, how does one reverse or deviate from what the system represents according to changing of status, or like how? You got something?
Only way you can do that is with adhesion contracts. And adhesion contracts will basically uplift all the contracts that you sign over your nature with. It's basically like you know, taking your jurisdiction back. But that's going to take you a lot of work to do that. But just like me and Rod been telling people, you know, you can't fight paperwork with paperwork. Paperwork is a part of their corporation. Everything we did was oral tradition. We didn't deal with no motherfucking paperwork. So when you in the matriarch, you don't deal with paperwork. Paperwork is connected to the old corporation, which is patriarchy. So in the time of the matriarch, why would you use a patriarchal concept to liberate yourself?
Yeah. So
you can't liberate yourself with paperwork during this time period because the corporations are falling.
Yeah. And I just feel like it's like, you know, we are children of the universal prime creator. You know, we are the children of the gods. We have the ability to become the gods. So it's like, why would you want to conform to the jurisdiction of man? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's you conforming to being a part of mankind's system when you are actually woman and man. There's a difference between human and mankind. Mankind is over all that bullshit, you know, but we have, you know, the genetics and we have the abilities and the capabilities of being children of the universal prime creator, which are those who are co-creators with the universal prime creator. Yep. Okay. So yeah, now that's it, because I know we running close on time. I know I gotta wrap up too. But for the very final question was how can the tribe find you? how can they support you? You know, where can they get your, access to your channels, and also to support you buying your products, your books and everything else that you got going on?
Even though they demonetized my channel, I'm still going to be uploading on my YouTube channel weekly. And I'm actually going to be putting out a lot more information on my YouTube channel. You can find me on there at Bdell 1014. You can find me on Instagram at Bdell 1014, BDELL 1014. You can find me on Facebook at Bridell Rice Bay. And you can also find my book on Amazon, The Sacred Book of the Chosen. It's on Amazon. You can find that. And that's pretty much all my platforms. Oh, and you can find me on TikTok at Bdell 1014.
I share. And then you got time for 2 quick questions, bro? Like, real quick. Okay, because I didn't see these. I think they might have just came in, but let's see if I can find it. Where did the question go to? Okay, at first thing said adhesion contract. Is that the proper spelling for that?
I think you're spelling it right.
Okay. And then the other one was Jay Tyson 378 had another quick one. Who is the ideal individual to assist with this, and does this shenanigans cancel out everything that's pretty much got us linked to the system?
Oh, you talking about like my YouTube channel?
No, I think that was kind of following up from the question about marriage and the paperwork, and how you were saying the way that you gave the advice about how to get out of that, or how to create.
You really don't have to do anything. It's kind of like one of those things, because they're corporations of control that is controlled by mankind. So, mankind, is a synthetic individual. So they created a synthetic system. So their systems of control doesn't have any type of sustainability during the time of the sun cycle. The sun cycle is all about the matriarch. The matriarch doesn't deal with paperwork. So that's why I was saying you don't need any type of adhesion contracts. You don't have to sign, any type of paperwork to get a nationality and to have your rights or whatever. You don't have to do that no more. That's a part of the old system.
Ashe. Oh, all right. Well, yeah, I definitely appreciate you, bro. Like I said, I'll definitely be touching base with you to see when we can get the next war report scheduled for the tribe and for the family and the good people, man. You got a last thought you want to share with the tribe before we get about this thing?
During this time period, take care of your energy. Because as you can see, you got a lot of scientists coming up missing. You got, content creators saying they committing suicide and things of that nature. So during this time period, if you're a truth teller, take care of your energy and pay attention to everything around you, because everything right now is the epitome of frequency warfare. It's narrative warfare, and you're looking at asymmetrical biochemical warfare. You're looking at warfare in all forms. So take care of your energy and stay vigilant.
Yes, sir. And stay heavily strapped up, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially. And I think everybody in the tribe knows exactly where we're going with that. But make sure you got everything you need to stand 10 toes down for you and for your safety and protection for all of you and your family's well-being. So with that, family, ain't never been nothing suicidal about me or Brother Bdell or anybody else we've had in this channel. So we ain't speaking on no nefarious low frequency forces, but just know, keep us in these bodies, boy. I'm gonna speak for me, because boy, I'm telling you, let me out, man. Knocking every fucking thing over. Hurricanes, typhoons, volcanoes, earthquakes, boy. We gonna everything getting knocked over. So y'all better let God's children do God's work. And not have your mother.
It's gonna happen regardless.
Yes, sir. That's facts. But nah, man, I appreciate you all, family. Appreciate the love and support. And yeah, we'll be ramping this thing back up, man. We definitely working through the kinks of some new transitions and transformations, but we're gonna continue to keep these Ashe streets bubbling, and we're gonna continue to keep the information coming, family. So I appreciate all the love and support. Give nothing but love to all of y'all. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless and good night, Brother Bdell. I'll see you on the next one, family. We out. Peace.
Salute. Peace.
Ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé ṣàpò ìyàgbọ́ tẹ́ǹtì ẹni takísà ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo ṣe ní gbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́. Forsake not your ancestors and pray